Dave, this is a fun one for me. I'm excited to introduce our guest today, Ashley Lentz. She grew right up down the road from us here in Ankeny, Iowa. She graduated in 2016 with a Bachelor of Science in Psychology from the University of, doesn't matter.
Oh, it doesn't matter.
I'm in cyclone territory.
She and her husband, Tyler, have a newborn baby. Well,
yes.
How old would he be now?
He's 8 months old now.
Yes.
I know he's crawling, and it's crazy.
She graduated in 2020 as an ordained Lutheran pastor, and as the Lutheran pastor in October of 2020. She enjoys traveling, reading, being outside, spending time with her family and friends, and being a podcast guest.
Yeah, anytime.
Obviously. She's got a English setter as a puppy.
Yes.
How old is Scout?
Scout's, he'll be 5 in December, and he's amazing, but also he is a lot of work.
That's great. And most importantly, Dave, she's passionate about teaching others, and that's what she's here to do today, because we're taking a little bit different approach to this Farm4Profit episode. We don't normally, what do you call it, a theory? You call it a mindset. This isn't a balance sheet item. This isn't a profit and loss statement. This is not something of material that you can identify a value. We're going to talk about scarcity mindset. Do you know, Dave, what is the scarcity mindset?
I don't know 100% what the scarcity mindset is, but a way of running your business slash farm for in our neck of the woods is the way I'd guess it to be.
So when you think it is a way to run your farm, when you think of scarcity, obviously that doesn't mean a lot of. That means it's pretty hard to find.
Yeah, we had that other gentleman on that said farm like there's no insurance behind it. I think that's just setting a mindset that we're going to make it no matter what. We're going to make it by doing this. We're going to make it, etc., or not make it, or change these rules, or do something. So that might allude into it, but I still don't know. But I'm sure we're going to get into it.
We are. So Ashley, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So we told the listeners just a little bit about you. What else would you like to add to your introduction?
Gosh, I mean, I am a Hawkeye hanging out in Huxley, Iowa today. So thanks for welcoming me here. No, I think that about covers it. Yeah, I love being a Lutheran pastor. It really is my calling. I didn't know that's what I was going to do with my life until a couple years ago. And,
Gotcha.
It's been a huge blessing. I grew up at Lutheran Church of Hope, and it's fun to come full circle and hang out there now.
You don't see very many female pastors, Dave.
I've seen a handful, but yeah, not very many.
It's almost like the same number of females involved in agriculture.
Probably less.
Oh, you think?
I think a lot less.
Yeah.
I think there's more females in agriculture than you know, and there's very few, I'm going to say, pastors.
Yeah.
There you go.
So do you have any tie to agriculture to start with?
Very, very little. I have family in Knoxville, Iowa, that farm. And so my dad grew up hanging out with that side of his family and farming, but he grew up in Ankeny. So I have no immediate family that farms. I did, however, grow up going to county fairs. What county is Knoxville in? Anyway.
That's a good question. Auctioneer?
I should know this.
I should know it too. It's Jasper. It's south of Jasper.
It's not Jasper. There's another town in Iowa that is the name of the county of Knoxville, because I always get them confused. Anywho, I grew up going to the county fair. Marion County. Thank you. Not
Power
Marion
of
the
Google.
town. I grew up going to the Marion County Fair, watching my cousins show cattle.
Yep.
And I thought that's what the state fair was. I thought there was only cows and cattle at the state fair. I didn't know there was a Midway until I was in high school, and my friends were like, we hang out at the fair. And I was like, why do you go to the cattle barn? And they were like, there's a cattle barn at the fair? That is my knowledge of farming. That's literally all I know.
Gotcha. So listeners, you know where you're coming from here. Well, we know what a cow and we know what a combine is. So
and that's the difference for this show. So we are looking at this, and the scarcity mindset, which I'm going to have you define for our listeners actually here in just a minute, is something that, as I heard you preach on this, and that's not what I don't want to turn any listeners away that feel like we're going to go into a sermon. That's not the point of today's show. Now, there will be a lot of faith-based comments, but this is something that, as I was hearing it during your sermon, I went, oh, crap. This is me. So we'll see if any of our listeners can think the same thing. So what to you is a scarcity mindset.
Yes, a scarcity mindset. It's kind of how our culture operates, really. It's walking into every single day thinking, I don't have enough of, fill in the blank, and worrying about those things, stressing about those things, overly planning about those things, letting them become so prevalent in your life that we actually forget to be grateful for all of the things that we do have. We actually forget the list of the really good stuff that is happening in our lives because we're so narrowly focused on maybe what we don't have or where our goals haven't been attained instead of the things that we do have.
Yeah, and that hits home, and I'm going to help relate, at least in my personal life. I will share as we go through this episode where that hits me. But I have a feeling a couple of our listeners right now are going, huh. Mm-hmm. Because that is. Culturally, we either want more.
Yes.
Or we're afraid we're not going to be able to get it anymore. I mean, go back to the toilet paper scare.
Yes, of COVID.
Of COVID.
Uh-huh.
That was that has scarcity mindset written
all over it. The people literally didn't have it, and the people who did hoarded it for fear of not having it.
What's in your what Dave? Dave's got this look on his face,
he's
and I love
thinking.
it.
All I could think of the whole time was the hymn. Hymn, for those that you don't know, what you might sing at church. Count your many blessings, name them one by one. I don't know if you ever heard of that.
Uh-huh.
That's what I was thinking. I don't have enough, but count your many blessings every day. We see a lot of people on TikTok or out there that want more all the time. They're like, my combine's not big enough, mine's this, but hey, I'm making it and I'm still not belly up, and there's a lot of guys that are still trying.
Why do you think people listen to our podcast?
I know, right?
We're
more
Farm4Profit. We're helping farmers achieve more profit because there's a fear that there might not be a profitable tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And in agriculture, that's a legit cycle that happens to where there are less profitable years.
Right.
But the goal of this episode is to help you not become depressed, feel bad about the years where it is less profitable, or you have less crop, or you have less calves that live through the winter. Whichever it is, this is a real mindset. But we need to first, before we get too deep into this, is there's got to be an opposite.
Yes.
So what's the opposite of this scarcity mindset?
Yep. It's called an abundant mindset. An abundant mindset is waking up every day saying, wow, I'm so grateful for list the things that we do have. I'm grateful that I have a family that is healthy. I'm grateful that I have a farm that is making it. I'm grateful, fill in the blank. That leads to changes in our mindset. We can rewire our brain when we think in terms of gratitude instead of in terms of scarcity. It doesn't mean that we still don't want to grow or we could be worried about a potential non-profitable year. Those are still a reality. And at the same time, we hold that intention with, I'm actually really grateful for all of the things that are happening in my life right now.
So how do we make the line, or I'm going to crucify this word, differentiate? If I can say that. How do we do that between competitiveness and eagerness and I'm here to kick butt and take names versus I want more?
Good question. One of those is driven by a desire to improve self. And I think another one is driven by fear. Some of us have personalities that are competitive and eager, and that is not a bad thing. When that begins to steal our calling in life, when it begins to steal joy or happiness, that is then coming from a place of fear.
Because Tanner, I'm thinking I've had a good year this year in my business, but man, all my competition did better than I did, and they're still kicking butt and take. I mean, we had a great year, but I still am hungry to get the next deal. But it's just a goal. Next year, I'd like to do 2x. Next year, I'd like to do 3x.
Right, but I would say that that's not the scarcity mindset.
Right.
That's a competitive mindset. I would say the conversation that we had this morning, based around something else you could do to protect the future, your retirement, you're looking at that as I've got this today, but it might not be here tomorrow.
Yep.
That's the scarcity mindset. Because I don't know if I caught that comment during your sermon, or at least caught the comparison, because that made me sit back and think that, okay, maybe not everything I was viewing as a scarcity mindset in my life is, and some of it's driven by competitiveness, personal growth, personal development, and not for fear that it won't be here tomorrow. And Dave, I'm going to start off with the podcast. The best thing that I can relate to our listeners is what we're doing right here. We started with 0 listeners.
Yeah.
And now we have a thriving podcast that people want to be guests on, that people want to advertise on, that people want to come and meet us in a public setting. And it's not for fear that it won't be here next week that we try hard. It's because we want to do better and be more competitive. So it's not a scarcity thing that we put as much effort into the podcast as we do. But I do think there's a little bit of an element, at least for me personally, that if I don't prepare an outline, if I don't prepare show notes for Dave and Corey,
A fear that we won't go off without a hitch. Yeah.
right, we won't have a show that performs as well. I know we can edit it. I know we can do all
Now,
the
you're on the
show.
wrong side to go. See, you're on the fearful side. I'm on the faith side. I am faithful that you are going to bring a template every time.
Yes.
And
You have an abundant mindset about the
I
podcast.
guarantee that we can pull it out of our backside. If not,
That's true.
Because I just know I can talk for days and we can have a podcast. Guaranteed.
Yes.
No,
That's different personality speaking too, right?
And when we think of farmers, they're not all type A. So very introverted. They think to themselves, very educated, but probably keep their thoughts to themselves. And, they listen to what everybody else does. So they're tearing themselves apart inside their brain probably rather than voicing it out loud.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which is a good point. You look at the practices in agriculture, and so many things are done to mitigate what can't be controlled. Farmers will install drain tile in their fields to get water off the field as fast as possible in case of torrential downpours or a wet spring. They will, where they can, put up irrigation systems or drip irrigation.
In case it doesn't rain.
In case it doesn't rain.
Right.
Livestock, there's uses of vaccinations. There's confinements instead of leaving them out on the range. Farmers are mitigating as much risk as possible, but that's okay.
Right. Yes. We're talking about the difference between being faithful and being foolish. We walk this tension all the time too. I'm going to take steps to be faithful in my farming business as I know that to be, versus I'm just going to let it happen the way that's going to happen. That could be considered foolish. There are steps you can take to have a better year, and you might implement those things. Yeah.
So in culture right now,
Yes.
you shared a quote during church.
Yes.
Tell these listeners what that quote was.
Yes, this is a quote from Brené Brown, and she has a podcast. She's a PhD researcher. She studies emotions, shame, grief. She's really, really fascinating. This is from one of her podcasts right as COVID was happening. She says, you can tell a culture is deeply in scarcity when the conversation at a cultural level revolves around, what should I be afraid of right now, and whose fault is it?
Does that ring a bell, Dave? When you think agriculture, do you see that?
I don't know. Farmers are resilient. I think half. I think it's almost 50-50. I know farmers on one side, they're like, it didn't rain, and the seed costs too much, and doggone, fertilizer costs, they're up and they're killing us. Farmland prices are high. They have the negative attitude. But I know other farmers that are out there like, man, we could kill it this year if we implement this, and that. And I got a couple guys that they're trying to expand, and they're kicking butt and taking names.
So when you think about that differentiating right now in your mind, and you divide them both into categories, to your outside perception, which ones are the most successful?
The ones that run it like a business, not with emotion.
So the ones that are looking at it as, what could we do to increase the abundance or have an abundant outlook?
I mean, I had one guy who bought a farm from me, and he says, Dave, I'll never see this thing pay for it. Well, that doesn't make sense. That's not profitable. He says, but I am building generational wealth for my family for the future. He was positive about a negative scenario.
Sure. He had an abundant mindset.
That's right.
Yeah.
So when you think about that as far as human emotion goes, because we've got listeners that for some reason, every time we meet them, they just seem down.
Yeah.
They could be this could be the highlight of their day. They got to come meet the guys on Farm4Profit. They got to meet the guests that we were hanging out with, and you just can't get a rise
Yes.
out of them. So what does a scarcity mindset do to human emotion?
Yep. a scarcity mindset kind of starts with fear. Fear leads us to anxiety, worry, poor choices, and then negative outcomes. It's a very negative loop when you look at it. When we live in a scarcity mindset, we do see this culturally. We fear not having enough time, not having enough money, not having fill in the blank. That leads to worry every single day. You meet the worried people and they're down. Even if it's a great day, they're constantly worried. You almost see the weight of the world on them. Contrasting with a scarcity mindset, fear, anxiety, poor choices, negative outcomes, is the abundant loop. An abundance loop starts with gratitude. Gratitude leads to peace of mind. Peace of mind leads to wise choices and positive outcomes. People who have an abundant mindset could be going through the exact same thing. Dave, you were just talking about this. Could be going through the exact same thing as somebody in a scarcity mindset, but they're looking at it with a positive outcome in mind. They're looking at it with gratitude of what they do have instead of fear or worry about what they don't.
And so much of farming revolves around income, and it somebody else is determining what the price of corn is. So I don't get to make the decision on how much, or I get to when to sell it. I get to make that decision, but not how much they'll give me. Sure. I don't get to make the decision when it rains. So there's a lot of unknowns. I don't get to make the decision when something breaks down and what it costs to fix it and what new equipment costs. I don't get to make the decision of what new seed and new fertilizer and why foreign conflicts will affect that price. So there's a lot of negatives in farming that could give people a depression state, Tanner, or a scarcity mindset.
Do you see that, Ashley, in the congregation that you serve and just your understanding of the scarcity mindset? Is depression come more often to those that have a scarcity mindset?
Wholeheartedly, I would say yes. When I care for people, often they will sit in my office and immediately they will list everything that's going wrong in their life. And that's what I'm here for. I listen to that. But the second they're done with that list, I ask them to tell me one or two things that are going right. And in that moment, their mindset has just shifted from scarcity to abundance. The things that are going right don't diminish the things that are hard that we're going to sit and talk about. But in that split second, you have informed them without informing them that actually it's not as bad as they think it is. That I'm going to listen and empathize and care for them as best as I can. And they still have things to be really, really grateful for.
That's hard to do, though.
It's really hard.
It's
especially when we live in a culture that tells us it's normal to live in a scarcity mindset. It's normal to worry about finances. It's normal to worry about tomorrow. It's normal to worry about sending my 8-month-old to college.
Right. That's actually a very valid point. Well,
Yeah.
We're setting up college savings accounts when they're born.
We are.
As soon as we get Social Security numbers.
I've always wondered how I can do this. Is I wanted to bottle up positive attitude and sell it, but I don't know how we can do that. So how do we bottle up the abundance mindset, or how do we tell our listeners to have an abundant mindset?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I see it. The observations that I have in agriculture, either through customers, through prospects, or friends that we have as listeners of this podcast, is I'm going to say it's probably 50-50 like you described to begin with. But there are some that complain a lot. And that's not because of scarcity mindset. But when you listen to some of the complaints, and it's a fear, especially around the topic that I hear is land control. Oh, I just don't know if I could ever afford to buy a farm, or I just don't know if cash rent is going to go up. Those are legit concerns, and those are fine. But when it turns into a conversation about the neighbor, or the way somebody else is farming,
Right.
or what type of task it's going to take for you to expand your operation, that's when it shifts more, in my opinion, into a scarcity mindset. It's the fear of not being able to farm anymore.
Yes, correct.
Rather than I'm going to take steps to try and control the land cost for my operation. And that kind of the same thing with livestock, is livestock takes space. Either it's a building or a pasture or whichever it is. And it's fine to plan ahead to make sure that the future of your operation is good to go.
That's faithful. Yep.
But not to live in scarcity and have such a negative attitude around cities expanding.
Yes. A scarcity mindset can steal joy. As believers, not every listener is perhaps a believer, but I want everyone to know joy. When our joy becomes stolen, that's a good red flag that we're perhaps in a scarcity mindset, that we should perhaps be looking at things with an abundance mindset or shift our focus to an abundance mindset. We should all experience joy every single day. Not happiness. Happiness is fleeting. It comes and goes. Joy is a deep-seated, I'm so grateful that I woke up this morning and took a breath, and I'm going to live my day in that headspace.
Let me expand on it. She said something a little bit ago. Ashley said gratitude. Mm-hmm. So let me take it the farmer ways. So I get the opportunity to sell farmland, and when I do, oftentimes we're kicking a tenant off the property.
Oh, sure.
So they're losing farmland. Mm-hmm. Okay. There's two attitudes you could have when you lose farmland. One is, this is horrible, this sucks, this is bad. One is appreciative of gratitude that I was able to farm that farm for the last 20 years with this family. They decided to sell it, et cetera, et cetera. I told you this morning, Tanner, and I don't know the quote, but no good deed goes unrewarded. Is that what it says?
The way you're saying it is no good deed goes unpunished.
Yeah.
But it's the way you're using it in context is when you do good for someone else, you usually have good karma.
Good karma on the other side.
Back,
so
yeah.
I've had the opportunity lately to where we took on farm management, and one of the guys who I sold a farm out from underneath him, but he had a gratitude, positive attitude is what he had. Mm-hmm. Well, no, I don't get to farm that one this year. I'm sure another one will come along. Well, he helped me with other stuff, and I think I don't know if he'll be the one, but I'm considering him.
He's going to have an opportunity.
He's got an opportunity to farm this farm that came up for farm management.
So are we just talking the difference between a positive attitude and a negative attitude? Or is it deeper than that?
I think it's deeper than that.
Okay.
Yes. I think we're talking like what we're actually seeing in humankind in our culture. We tend to live as if, a really good example in my line of work is busyness. People are so busy. A good example, student ministry just kicked off. We have so many conflicts on Wednesday nights with students, and students will tell you, I'm so busy, I don't have time to come to church. That is a scarcity mindset, busyness generally. We all have the exact same amount of time in a day. Mm-hmm. Yep. Every single one of us gets 24 hours. What we do with that time is entirely up to us. So busyness is actually just a scarcity mindset when it comes to time. That's not necessarily a negative attitude. That's just the reality of our culture.
I told Tanner this about working out this morning. The people that work out scheduled time. I don't have any time to work out. I'm telling you. No, but the people that do, they make time.
But it's the attitude around it is that they want to be there.
Right.
It's not a chore. It's not a have to.
Yep.
They're thankful that they are physically able to be able to go and perform that.
Yeah.
I got a question that we didn't previously even give you time to prepare for.
That's okay.
The conversations that you've had, can scarcity mindset be triggered or be flipped into happening because of past trauma?
Ooh, interesting. I would love to see what Brené Brown has to say about that in her research. Off the top of my head, honestly, probably.
I mean, I'm thinking of, like Dave mentioned with that client of his, a farm gets sold out from underneath you, or it happens in a not good situation, and that's a traumatic event. You get fired from a job.
Absolutely.
Now you go to work every day thinking, oof, is my key going to open the door this morning?
Mm-hmm.
See, I go back to attitude. That's either you can have a positive attitude and see the silver lining or not. But as Ashley's saying, is it a larger global trend rather than have we changed the way that we do rather than just attitude?
Yeah. And Dave, negative attitude, if you live in a negative attitude space for long enough, you now have a scarcity mindset. I think they directly tie into one another.
I used to not swear. Never once have I ever heard my dad swear. Ever. And I went to work with guys that swear. I'm telling you, you do what's around the people that you're around.
Absolutely.
Right, wrong, or indifferent, but I can swear with the best.
I wondered where you were going with that. I was afraid you were going to say that came from me.
But my dad, I've never to this day heard him swear.
See, and that's impressive.
Ever. That's unheard of. I don't know.
That's a decision that he made.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a mindset that he put into place.
Our brains become wired from the people we hang out with, from the culture that we hang out in. So if we hang out in a negative attitude space, that wires our brain to think scarcely. And vice versa. If we hang out in a positive attitude space, that wires our brain to think abundantly.
So how do we
Yeah.
Faith.
You know where I was going to go.
No,
to.
I don't. Where are you going?
Well,
Go.
we're 25 minutes into the conversation, and we've been criticized before from our listeners, our lovely
On how to
listeners,
fix it?
on providing solutions.
Well, there we go.
Sure.
And that's where you're
Yeah,
headed.
I was heading that direction. Is how do we? What I'm hearing is the people that don't have a scarcity mindset have faith, not like faith in Jesus. I'm talking
Right.
faith that it's going to be good. Faith in
Faith in something better.
Something better.
Yep.
That's what they have faith in.
Yep.
How, or is that a taught? Now I'm wondering. Is this sociologically? That's a word. I'm sure it is. I made it. Sociologically, faith. Are people born with like that? They're faithful that it's going to work out, or are they? Is this a learned attribute? Like, your parents like they were always worried, so now I'm always worried. What's your thought?
You're talking about nature versus nurture. I have
Yeah.
a psychology degree, so that gives me just enough
Well, I do
information
too. I mean,
to be slightly
you're right.
dangerous.
So.
Yes, nature versus nurture. I think it's both. You grow up in. For example, my dad is a high school math teacher. He has been, he retired. He's been retired for a year, and he actually just went back to the math classroom. So he's like semi-retired. But he used to give positive attitude points. If his students saw him in a hallway and would say, "Hey, Pete, it's a great day. Hey, Pete, I love math." He would literally give them extra credit in his class for having a positive attitude. That's part of growing up. That's nurture, right? And I think some people